what you're doing, not just in South Africa, but for women around the globe. I would love for you to share that here on Global Women Speakers Nigerian Summit. I want you to take it away. I want you to just tell them who you are, but what you're doing, and most importantly, why you are doing it. So, with that being said, Tracy, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Tina. Hi, everyone. It's 8 p.m. in South Africa, and we've had a 36 degrees Celsius day, which means hot. It is an absolute privilege to be here and see you all virtually. I'm Tracy Kotzen. I'm a sociologist, trauma practitioner in my earlier career, and now the CEO of the Mental Wellness Initiative. And our work really is to destigmatize all the issues around mental health and to advance social justice as a priority for South Africa. And I'm sure it's a priority all over the world that needs to be addressed. I've put a little poll, if you can see it on the screen. Be interesting for everyone to jump onto the poll and give us a little answer there around what drives you most. We don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to put up a couple of slides because there is a concept that I want to share with you. Okay, the poll I think will run in the background. So I'm going to move it. Let's hope I don't mess this up too much. All right. And let me find my slides. So can I just confirm if everyone's able to see these? I need someone to say yes or no. Tina, can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see it.
You can? Great. All right, ladies, we don't have a lot of time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm assuming we're a mixed crowd. I really want to talk us through how important it is to heal in order to actually accomplish what we want to accomplish in the future. We have a temptation as human beings to avoid that which is painful. And so when there's something really difficult from the past, there's this idea that we should just move past it, get on with our lives, forget about it, and get back to quote unquote normal. But in fact, my firm belief and my work in the social justice space bears this out. The best way to your best self is to go through the center of the thing that hurts you most. Now, we want to go around it, over it, under it. We want to find a shortcut. We want to suppress it, drug it, medicate it, addict it. But in fact, we have to go through the middle of it. And here's why. I'm going to put it in a nutshell for you. Let's talk about trauma briefly. Trauma doesn't have to be one dramatic event. It can be a whole lot of little things that have built up over time. But the key component of this is that it invokes helplessness, a sense of terror, fear for your life, or fear for safety or the life and safety of someone else. And the experience changes you fundamentally. Now, trauma is very personal. Two people in exactly the same situation can come out with two very different experiences in terms of their perceptions of how traumatic that was. And so it can be quite lonely. It can be confusing. Different people are impacted differently. And so we tend to judge one another and think, you're not reacting as though you're traumatized, but who are we to know how someone else is experiencing trauma? It's deeply personal, so it is your own experience. And here's the thing, bouncing back from trauma is not a thing. It's not a thing. It should never be a thing because by definition, trauma changes you fundamentally. And so you can't go back to the way you were before. So, what does that even mean? When trauma has happened and it's still living in your body, it's still living in your memory, it feels more present than past, your fight, flight, freeze, and faint response is ready to kick in at all the time. Your body is primed for one of those responses. Commonly, we call them fight or flight, but there's actually freeze and faint as well. Now, when your fight and flight response is activated because trauma is living inside your system, your creativity, logic, self control, and planning go offline. Your brain can't run those two functions equally effectively at the same time. So when you're making decisions, and this whole conference was about tech and futures, and when we're making these future orientated decisions and we're trying to be strategic with our lives, very difficult to do that without full access to our creativity, logic, self-control, and planning functions of the brain, because we're so busy in the fight or flight response. We're so busy looking for the threat, trying to manage and minimize threat, that this part of our brain that actually carries us into the future doesn't function properly. So what ends up happening is you live in this space of two different worlds. We strive for the place on the left, that beautiful lake with the peaceful mountain. We strive to live there in a place of contentment, but we often end up on the other end of it in something that feels more like a volcano. It's hot, it's chaotic, it's unpredictable, it's toxic. And we move between these spaces because we're still being hijacked by our past trauma, even while we're striving to move towards this future state of peace, happiness, contentment, thriving, prosperity, and so forth. In the space of contentment, you'll find yourself energized and enthusiastic. You have interest in self-care. You have great relationships. You're meeting responsibilities. You're excited about life. Your emotions are regulated and your coping skills are healthy. But on the other end of it, there's little energy, little to no self-care. Relationships are volatile. You can't meet responsibilities. There are signs and symptoms of depression, unregulated emotions, which means you're triggering on a hair trigger. You can cry for any reason, become hysterically laughing for any reason, fall asleep when you're not tired. Your whole body system goes out of kick. But the biggest part of unregulated emotions is anger as a quick trigger. So that's a real red flag. And then unhealthy coping mechanisms. So that's when I say we try to drug and medicate ourselves, and it's not always evidently with something that is obviously bad. Workaholism can be a drug. Spending 8 hours a day in the gym can be a drug. It's any way to medicate your pain, to distract you from what hurts, and to really keep your brain occupied with distractions so you don't have to deal with what hurts on the inside. So here's a little diagram that represents the way we treat our trauma. So remember, we're trying to get to a life or a state of being that is future focused. We want thriving, we want healthy, we want prosperity, we want to be nurtured, at peace, and have great relationships. But we find ourselves self-sabotaging. I can't see any of your faces today, but I'm imagining that some of you are nodding. So look out if this is you. Look out for it. In the past, there's been pain. There's a little ambulance, a broken heart, a little virus, representing all the ways in which we've been wounded as people. That's the orange arrow. But you as a person live in the present. The blue box, you can only live in the present. You can only breathe in the present and only exist in the present. But there is this future state that we're moving towards. We're seeking it out. And it's a bit of a funny thing because the future is ultimately always only the present. You can't climb out of the present and get in the future, but we plan for it nonetheless. And so here's what we do, right? We've had all of this pain, disappointment, betrayal, loss, and grief in our lives that have existed in the past. And I want to take this moment to say to you, and it's going to sound strange, but stick with me. The past exists only as a memory. And that's a really hard one to hear. It was a hard one for me to process and understand when I started doing my work in the trauma space, because I'm a 4 times over sexual abuse survivor from childhood. And the pain of that lives in my present day still. So it's really hard for me to process that all of those things live only as a memory. But it is factually true. The past exists only as a memory. And what we carry with us exists only because we do this. We get out of our present moment. We go to this big ball where we've contained our pain, disappointment, betrayal, loss, and grief. And of course, that's not a comprehensive list. We can add a lot to that. And then we give it a little shove and push it into the future. And that becomes the expectation of the future. We've now defined our future by our experience of the past. So we expect to find more pain, more disappointment, more betrayal, more loss, more grief, etc. That generates fear. So again, if we're looking towards a future that looks like the peaceful blue lake in that picture a few moments ago, but we're taking everything that hurt from before and we're throwing it ahead of us into the future, we're inadvertently creating that volcano situation in the future state, but we haven't even got there yet. And then to make it worse, we treat our future projection as though it is a fact, as though it is actually, definitely, guaranteed going to happen. And so we end up creating a future vision that is actually so full of fear that we will not be able to cope if we have to go through all that pain, disappointment, betrayal, loss, and grief again. So my tip for all of us is to try and reprogram, and this is possible. I do this therapeutically with groups of people at a time. We can reprogram things. Before we get to the reprogramming, I want to say this to you. If you don't reprogram, everything that is contained in your beach ball, where you keep everything that hurts, all of that trauma is making the decisions that run your life. It is affecting the way you parent. It is affecting the way you relate to your partner, your spouse, your colleagues at work, your siblings, your parents, everyone you interact with. It affects the way you show up at work, and it suppresses your personal power. So your takeaway from this slide is that your trauma, unresolved trauma, all of your woundedness from the past, if you don't address it, is currently making your decisions and running your life, because you're making your decisions based on a principle that says, I want to avoid pain. I want to avoid having to deal with what is in the beach ball. I desire this peaceful future, but I don't actually know how to get away from the pain that seems to stalk my everyday and show up all the time in my life. It's important to recognize that there are reasons, upsides and downsides, to doing the work of healing. It's good and well and fine for me to sit here a million miles away and tell you, hey, you should go and do the work of healing. Quite frankly, I have no idea what it is that you have experienced. I have no idea how deep your hurt goes. I have no idea how recent your wounding is. And I've been talking about the past, but maybe your wounding is in the present. Maybe it's happening in your life right now. So while I'm presenting the slide, I'm also saying, with great respect to where you are in your life, for you to make an empowered decision on how you want to treat your own healing. And so I give that back to you as an empowered decision. But let's walk through some of the upside and downside of what happens when we choose to do the work of healing. So, the upside is recognizing that trauma is running your life. It's not a great realization, but it's great to know it rather than not know it and then be oblivious to the fact that trauma is running your life. It is making you sick. Constant stress hormones in the body make us sick. It's well known. It affects weight loss and weight gain. It affects sleep. It affects eating. It's affecting your sex life. It's affecting your heart rate, your heart health, and stress hormones just wreak havoc on the body because they're meant to exist for a short period of time to get us out of a dangerous situation. That's what fight or flight is supposed to do. But when we live with trauma constantly, we're in constant fight or flight, even though it may be a low grade, but it is constant. And so it's eroding a whole lot of the good
Yes.
systems of the body. You hear me? Great.
Yes, absolutely. I have a question. I would love to
Yeah.
have this as a PDF. Can you make this as a PDF? Because, oftentimes we need to see exactly what's happening, why we should do the work. Are we healing? Are we progressing? Are we still the same? I get so excited about this topic because for me, Tracy, I make a lot of mistakes and I am growing and learning on a daily basis. And so I have this sheet where I check off, hey, did I improve? Did I have that same behavior? And if I did, what is behind that? Because I
Right.
am seriously, like I always tell people, my growth game is so strong that every single time you meet me, I will have to reintroduce myself because I'm a new person. And I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you this, do not allow the people that still hold you to that old self from that last year, those 10 years, that last month, yesterday. Don't allow those people to affect your growth because I can tell you this, they don't matter. And the people that matter will be the people that will acknowledge, accept, and encourage your growth, right? Right, Tracy? I mean,
Absolutely.
like, it's reality. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's a downside, right? So I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Can we have some of these as a PDF?
I'll send it to you as a PDF with pleasure. So, Tina, to yourself and the participants, I'll say that I took an 18-month sabbatical from my marriage. My husband and I moved into separate homes for 18 months. We were not splitting up.
Wow.
I needed a sabbatical because I needed to do the healing work. I was bringing
Mm,
four. So I'd said that I was a child abuse survivor 4 times over. So I was bringing four other men, in a sense, into my marriage. Four other molesters were living inside my relationship, and I took 18 months and did a whole lot of clean out work, which would fill volumes if I ever got to writing the book about it. But yeah, the healing work is it's empowered, it's necessary, and I think step one is deciding that it doesn't really matter what everyone else thinks. You have to do it for you because you owe yourself that. So let's just walk through the list real quick. I'm so aware of time. So the trauma is making you sick. Are you not, in fact, tired of constantly being in fight or flight mode? Another upside would be if you did the work, you would discover and unleash your immense power. You would achieve your highest ambitions and you will emerge as a changed person. On the
Yes, yes.
downside, yeah, you will emerge changed. It's guaranteed on both sides, in fact. Um,
I see
it will
that.
be the
That's
hardest work of your life. Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, I was gonna say thank you so much. I love how you ended. The reality is you will be changed. A new you, a transformation will take place no matter what. And that is the reason to heal, right? And so I
Yeah.
believe, as John C. Maxwell says, either you're growing or you are dying. There is no neutral. There is no staying the same. Either you're growing or you're dying. And that's the same with our brains. If you're not reading, if you're not learning new vocabulary words, if you're not open, you are something new is emerging, but it's the old you, it's the same you, it's not a new version of you. So Tracy, thank you
Mhm.
so very much. I cannot wait. As soon as I get this as a PDF, I'm going to make sure that I give it to all the participants. Everyone's like, yes, yes, we can see we're the ones. So that's awesome. So thank you, Tracy, so much. It's been absolutely amazing to have you all the way from South Africa. That was, I can say this, that in itself was a session. It was a 20 minutes session of healing. And so the reality is, reprogramming what's in the ball. I love that. So Tracy, I want this in a PDF as well so I can give to our viewers. And with that being said, thank you for joining us at 8 p.m. all the way from South Africa. Tracy, we adore you. I appreciate you. I cannot wait to see you in December. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Talk to you soon.
Take care of you.
Ciao.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.